The massive alien ships appeared from nowhere, their silver surfaces catching the light of distant stars as they positioned themselves at the edge of human space. Each vessel was larger than anything humans had ever built, their smooth hulls decorated with strange symbols that seemed to shift and change when looked at directly. Ambassador Kethfer walked slowly across the bridge of the lead ship, his tall frame moving with the confidence of someone who had done this many times before. His pale blue skin was marked with the ritual scars of his rank, and his 4 eyes never stopped moving as he studied the small blue planet that hung in the darkness ahead of them. "Another primitive world," he said to his aide, a younger member of his species who followed nervously behind him. "Look at their energy readings. They still burn fossil fuels for power. They fight wars with chemical explosives. How did such a backward species even manage to leave their home planet?" The aide checked his scanning device and nodded. "Their technology is at least 300 years behind our own, Ambassador. This should be simple." Kethfer smiled, showing teeth that were too sharp for comfort. "They always are. Send the standard message. Offer them the usual terms. Medical. Technology, clean energy, protection from other hostile species. In return, they provide resources and accept our guidance."
Ow.
Every species sees the wisdom in this arrangement eventually. Far below on Earth, deep beneath the busy streets of Seoul, Admiral Kim Tae-ho sat in a room filled with screens and blinking lights. The war room had been built during the last great conflict between human nations, but now it served a different purpose. The walls were thick concrete and steel, designed to survive even nuclear attack. The Admiral was an old man, his hair white and his face lined with years of difficult decisions. He had fought in 3 different wars during his career, each one teaching him something new about the nature of conflict and survival. When the alien transmission began playing on the main screen, he watched with the steady gaze of someone who had seen many enemies make many promises. The alien ambassador appeared on the screen, speaking in perfect human language. His voice was smooth and cultured, like a diplomat who had practiced this speech many times before. "Greetings, people of Earth. I am Ambassador Kethfer of the Zenthran Confederation. We come in peace, offering you a place among the civilized species of the galaxy." Lieutenant Park So-min looked up from her console, her young face showing excitement despite her training. "Sir, they're showing us images of their technology. Medical devices that can cure any disease. Energy systems that could power our entire planet. Ships that can travel between stars in days instead of years." The ambassador continued speaking, his 4 eyes seeming to look directly at everyone watching. "We have brought this offer to 847 species across the galaxy.
Oh.
All have found wisdom in accepting our protection. We ask only that you provide certain resources and accept our guidance in developing your civilization. In return, we will protect you from the dangers of the galaxy and share our advanced knowledge." Admiral Tae-ho leaned back in his chair, his weathered hands folded in his lap. Around him, his staff whispered excitedly about the possibilities. Clean energy could solve their climate problems, advanced medicine could end disease and hunger. The promise of protection from hostile aliens was appealing to a species that had only recently learned they were not alone in the universe. "Sir," Major Lee Jinwoo said from his station, "their offer seems generous. They're not asking for much in return." "What exactly are they asking for?" Tae-ho asked quietly. Lieutenant Park So-min read from her screen. "Tribute payments of rare metals and manufactured goods. Acceptance of Zenthran advisors in our governments. Agreement to follow Confederation law in matters of interstellar relations." And she paused, reading more carefully. "Complete disarmament of all military forces except for local police units." The room fell silent. Every person present had spent their careers in the military, defending their nations and their planet. The idea of giving up all weapons, all defenses, was difficult to accept. "They want us to become completely dependent on them," Tae-ho said slowly. "No weapons, no independent government, no way to defend ourselves if they decide to change the terms of this agreement." On the screen, the alien ambassador was still speaking, his voice filled with patient confidence. "We understand that some species require time to consider our offer. This is natural. You will wait in your system for 30 of your days while you discuss this matter among yourselves. but do not delay too long. The galaxy is a dangerous place for unprotected species." The transmission ended, leaving the war room in thoughtful silence. Finally, Admiral Tejo spoke to his communications officer. "Send a reply. Tell them we appreciate their generous offer, but Earth requires time to consider all aspects of this proposal. We will contact them within the specified time frame." The message was sent. Tejo stood and walked to the large wall map that showed human colonies and military installations across the solar system. His staff watched him carefully, knowing that their commander was making calculations that would determine the future of their species. "Sir," Lieutenant Park Soman asked hesitantly, "what are your orders?" Tejo studied the map for a long moment before answering. "Begin quiet evacuation of all non-essential personnel from our outer colonies. Reposition our defense fleets to more strategic locations. And contact the other Earth governments. Tell them we need an emergency council meeting." "Are we preparing for war, sir?" The old admiral looked at his young officers, remembering his own youth and the lessons he had learned through years of conflict. "We're preparing for reality, Lieutenant. In my experience, when someone offers you everything you want in exchange for your ability to defend yourself, they're usually planning to take much more than they're offering to give." The alien fleet had grown larger every day for 3 weeks. What started as a dozen silver ships had become nearly 100 vessels scattered across human space, like metal seeds planted in the darkness. Each ship was positioned carefully, watching over human colonies and trade routes with the patient attention of a predator studying its prey. Ambassador Kethfer stood in his private quarters, reading reports that made less sense each day. Aide had prepared detailed analyses of human behavior, but the patterns were confusing. Every other species they had encountered followed predictable responses to demonstrations of superior force. Fear led to negotiation. Negotiation led to acceptance. And acceptance led to peaceful integration into the Confederation. "The humans are evacuating their civilians from the outer colonies," his tactical officer reported during their morning briefing. "Transport ships are moving people back toward their home system. This is normal behavior when a species realizes they cannot win a direct confrontation." Kethfer nodded, but something bothered him. "What about their military forces?" "That is the unusual part, Ambassador. Instead of withdrawing their warships to defensive positions around their home world, they are moving them into more aggressive formations. Some of their battle groups are actually moving closer to our fleet positions." The ambassador's 4 eyes blinked slowly as he considered this information. In his experience, species either prepared to fight or prepared to surrender. They did not usually do both at the same time. Perhaps they are simply confused. Primitive minds may not understand the futility of resistance. "Should we increase pressure, sir?" Standard protocol suggests implementing economic restrictions and communication jamming. Begin Phase 2, intimidation protocols.
"Nothing that
causes permanent damage, but enough to make them understand the consequences of continued resistance." Far across space, Captain Nam Dong-han stood on the bridge of the human battleship Soul's Pride. Watching the alien fleet through the main view screen, the ship was one of humanity's most advanced vessels, but compared to the alien ships, it looked like a child's toy. The enemy vessels were not only larger, but moved with a grace that suggested technology far beyond human understanding. Captain Lieutenant Commander Yoon Haerin called from her station, receiving another broadcast from the alien flagship. Same message they've been sending for the past week. "Put it on screen," Dong Hyan ordered. The familiar image of Ambassador Kethfer appeared, his alien features calm and confident. "People of Earth, the Zenthuran Confederation continues to offer you the gift of civilization. We have shown great patience, but that patience is not unlimited. Consider carefully the benefits of cooperation versus the costs of resistance." Transmission ended, and the bridge crew looked to their captain for guidance. Dong Hyan was a veteran of the border wars, the last major conflict between human nations before first contact with alien life. He had learned to read enemy intentions through their actions rather than their words. "Sir," his weapons officer asked, "their fleet positioning suggests they could attack any of our colonies within hours. Are we really going to keep playing this waiting game?" They're not positioning to attack. Dong-hin replied calmly. They're positioning to intimidate. Look at their formation. Classic demonstration of force designed to make us feel helpless. They want us to see their ships and count our own vessels and realize we're outnumbered. Lieutenant Commander Yoon Hae-rin studied the tactical display more carefully. You're right, sir. If they wanted to attack, they would have done it already. They're following some kind of procedure. Exactly. They've done this before, probably. Hundreds of times. Show overwhelming force. Give the primitives time to think about it, then wait for surrender. It's a proven formula. But we're not surrendering, the weapons officer pointed out. No, we're not. And that's what confuses them. They're used to species that either fight immediately or give up immediately. They don't understand strategic. Patience. The communication system activated again, this time with a message from Earth Command. Admiral Kim Tae-ho's face appeared on the screen, his expression serious but not panicked. All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Tae-ho. Latest intelligence indicates the aliens are beginning economic pressure tactics. They're jamming some of our communication networks and blocking trade routes. This is phase 2 of their standard intimidation protocol. Captain Dong-han leaned forward. How do we respond, sir? Don't. Not yet. Let them think their strategy is working. Every day they spend trying to scare us is another day our people reach safety. Every day they waste on demonstrations is another day we learn about their capabilities and weaknesses. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew to contemplate their situation. They were vastly outnumbered, outgunned, and facing technology they barely understood. Any reasonable military analysis would conclude that resistance was hopeless. But Lieutenant Commander Yoon Hae-rin had studied military history, and she knew that humans had a long tradition of winning impossible battles. Sir, what if they get tired of waiting? What if they decide to attack anyway? Captain Dong-hein smiled grimly. Then we'll show them something they've never seen before. They think they understand humans because they've read our history and analyzed our psychology. But they've only seen us when we were fighting each other. They have no idea what we're capable of when we're united against a common enemy. Back on the alien flagship, Ambassador Kethver received reports that the human military was repositioning. Again, instead of the expected defensive formations, human ships were moving into what appeared to be attack positions. They're acting like they think they can win, his aide observed with confusion. Impossible, Kethver replied, but his voice carried a note of uncertainty. No species has ever chosen to fight the Confederation when faced with such overwhelming odds. They must be bluffing. Should we call their bluff, Ambassador? Kethver considered this carefully. Every instinct told him that the humans would surrender soon, just like every other species had. But something about their behavior suggested they were not following the usual pattern.
Ow.
They were evacuating civilians like a defeated species, but positioning military assets like a species preparing for war. Continue monitoring their activities, he decided. But prepare for the possibility that these humans may be more stubborn than usual. The message came as the sun rose over Earth. But it was being broadcast to every human colony, every space station, and every ship in human space. Ambassador Kethver appeared on every screen simultaneously, his 4 eyes looking directly at the camera with the confidence of someone who had delivered this speech many times before. People of Earth, he began, his voice deep and commanding. The Xantheran Confederation has shown you unprecedented patience. For over a month, we have waited while you considered our generous offer. We have offered you medical technology that could end disease and suffering. We have offered you clean energy that could power your entire civilization. We have offered you protection from the dangers of space and a place among the civilized races of the galaxy. In the deep underground command center beneath Seoul, Admiral Kim Tae-ho sat with his senior staff around a large table covered with maps and tactical displays. The room was filled with the quiet hum of electronics and the soft clicking of keyboards. As his people monitored the situation across human space, Colonel Oh Min-ji looked at her watch and then at the Admiral. Sir, our last civilian transport ships cleared the outer colony 6 hours ago. All non-essential personnel have been evacuated to the inner systems. The ambassador continued his speech, his tone becoming more serious. We have studied your species carefully. We understand that you value your independence, but independence without strength is meaningless. We have brought our 7th Fleet to your system. It's 300 vessels of war, each one capable of destroying your entire planet. These ships have brought peace to countless worlds across the galaxy. Admiral Tejo listened without expression. His weathered hands folded on the table. Around him, his staff watched quietly. They had all served in various conflicts throughout their careers, but this was different. This was not a war between human nations fighting over territory or resources. This was about the survival of their entire species. You have 1 solar rotation to accept our terms, Kethfer announced, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. 24 of your hours to make the wise choice. After that time expires, we will be forced to implement corrective measures. We do not wish to harm you, but we cannot allow your resistance to continue indefinitely. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in complete silence. The only sounds were the quiet beeping of computers and the soft breathing of the people gathered around the table. Everyone looked at Admiral Tejo, waiting for his response. The old admiral stood slowly, his joints stiff from years of service. He walked to the large wall display that showed the positions of every human ship and every alien vessel in their solar system. The difference in numbers was overwhelming. 300 alien ships against maybe 50 human vessels that could be called warships. Sir, Lieutenant Park Soman said quietly, "What are your orders?" Tejo studied the display for a long moment before answering. They're expecting us to panic. They've done this before, probably hundreds of times. Show overwhelming force, deliver an ultimatum, watch the primitives crumble, and beg for mercy. If we don't crumble, asked General Park Kun-ho, a man who had served alongside Tejo for over 20 years. Then they'll attack, the admiral replied calmly. They have to. Their entire system depends on other species believing they're invincible. If word gets out that humans refuse to surrender, other species might start getting ideas about resistance. Colonel Ominji checked her communications panel. Sir, we're receiving messages from all the colony governments. They're asking for instructions. Tell them to implement final defense protocol, Tejo ordered. All remaining personnel should take shelter in the hardened bunkers. All military assets should move to predetermined positions and send a message to the alien fleet. What should the message say, sir? Admiral Tejo turned away from the display and looked at his staff. These were good people, dedicated officers who had spent their lives serving their planet and their species. They deserved to know what they were facing. Tell them that Earth has received their ultimatum and considered their terms. Tell them that we respectfully decline their offer. The room fell silent again. Everyone understood what this meant. In less than 24 hours, they would be at war with an enemy that had conquered nearly 1,000 other species. Sir, Major Lee Ginwoo asked, do we have any chance of winning? Tejo smiled grimly. Ginwoo, they think they understand humans because they've studied our history. They've read about our wars and our conflicts. But they've only seen us. When we were fighting each other, they have no idea what we're capable of when we're united against a common enemy. 23 hours later, the alien fleet moved toward the human colony of New Busan. The colony was located on the edge of human space. It's far from Earth, but close enough to serve as an example. Ambassador Kethfer stood on his bridge, watching the approach with satisfaction. A demonstration of force against this outer colony should be sufficient, he told his tactical officer. Once the humans see their defenses crumble, they will realize the futility of resistance. The colony consisted of about 50,000 people living in a cluster of domed cities on an otherwise hostile planet. Its defenses were minimal by Zenthran standards, just a few orbital platforms and a small patrol fleet. The battle should be over within hours, but as the alien fleet approached, something unexpected happened. The human ships did not retreat to defensive positions around the colony. Instead, they moved forward to meet the alien fleet in open space. They're attacking us? The tactical officer asked in confusion. Impossible, Kethfer replied. Their force is completely inadequate. They must be attempting some kind of delaying action. But as the first shots were fired, it became clear that the humans were not trying to delay anything. They were fighting with a ferocity and coordination that caught the aliens completely off guard. Human ships used tactics that seemed to ignore their own safety, focusing entirely on inflicting maximum damage on the enemy. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "we're taking heavy casualties. The humans are using their ships as weapons, ramming our vessels when their guns are destroyed." Ambassador Kethfer watched in growing amazement as human ships fought with a desperation that seemed to make them more effective, not less. These were not the actions of a defeated species begging for mercy. These were the actions of a species that had decided to fight to the death. 2 months had passed since the war began, and Ambassador Kethfer could not understand what was happening. He sat alone in his private quarters, staring at reports that made no sense. The numbers on his screen told a clear story. The humans were losing every major battle. Their colonies were being attacked, their ships were being destroyed, and their military forces were being pushed back toward their home system. But somehow, the Zentheran fleet was also dying. "Sir," his aide said as he entered the room, his voice shaking slightly, "I have the latest casualty reports." Kethfer looked up from his desk. "How many ships have we lost this week?" 17, sir, including the entire 14th Battle Group." The ambassador felt his blood grow cold. The 14th Battle Group consisted of 12 heavy cruisers, each one capable of destroying a small planet. What happened to them? They were pursuing a damaged human vessel into an asteroid field. The human ship was barely functional, engines failing, weapons destroyed. Should have been an easy capture. An aide consulted his tablet, clearly uncomfortable with what he was reading. The human vessel somehow used the asteroids as weapons. Our tactical officers say it was impossible, but sensor records show the human ship somehow caused multiple asteroids to collide with our vessels. All 12 cruisers were destroyed. The human ship was also destroyed in the process.
Yes, Fish.
Closed his eyes and rubbed his temples. This was the 5th time this month that humans had destroyed superior forces by using their environment as a weapon. They fought in ways that no other species had ever fought, turning their own defeats into victories. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked quietly. 137 operational vessels, sir. Started with 300. The ambassador stood and walked to the window that looked out into space. In the distance, he could see the blue-green world of Earth still unconquered despite months of warfare. Every other species had surrendered by now. Every other species had seen the futility of resistance and accepted Zentheron protection. But the humans kept fighting. Across the battlefield, Kaptanam Donghayan stood on the bridge of Seoul's Pride, looking at his own reports. The ship was scarred and damaged from weeks of continuous combat. Blast marks covered the hull, and several sections were sealed off due to battle damage. But the ship was still fighting, and his crew was more efficient than ever. "Status report, Heron," he said to his second-in-command. Lieutenant Commander Yoon Heron studied her tactical display. "We've eliminated their reconnaissance screen in this sector, sir. The enemy formation is blind and scattered. They're moving in predictable patterns, trying to find us. Casualties. We've lost 40% of our fleet in this sector, but enemy losses are even higher. They're not adapting to our tactics as quickly as we're adapting to theirs." Dong Hyan nodded. This was something his alien enemies could not understand. Humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years, learning from every battle, every defeat, every victory. They were used to facing superior enemies and finding ways to win anyway. Sir Heron continued, "I recommend we implement Admiral Tejo's Protocol 12. The graveyard tactic?" Dong Heen smiled grimly. "Do it." Protocol 12 was something no alien tactical manual could have predicted. Human vessels deliberately moved into debris fields created by their own destroyed ships, using the wreckage as both cover and weapons. What the aliens saw as signs of defeat, humans used as tools of victory. The tactic was simple, but effective. Human ships would hide among the remains of destroyed vessels, appearing to be just more wreckage. When enemy ships approached to investigate, the humans would attack from concealment, using pieces of their own dead ships as projectiles and shields. All vessels. This is Seoul's pride, Donghain announced over the communication system. 2 designated positions among the debris field. Remember, every piece of wreckage is a potential weapon. Every destroyed ship is cover for the living. Make them pay for every meter of space. The human ships moved like ghosts through the graveyard of destroyed vessels, taking positions among the twisted metal and broken holes. To the aliens, it looked like the humans were hiding among their own defeats. In reality, they were preparing. An ambushed Ambassador Kethfer finally decided to access the complete human historical database that his intelligence teams had compiled. What he found there made him feel sick. Page after page of human history showed an endless series of wars, conflicts, and battles. Humans had been fighting each other for their entire recorded history, and they had gotten very good at it. Not fighting like a primitive species, he whispered to himself. They're fighting like ... like us, but better. The humans had learned something that the Zenthran Confederation had never needed to learn. They had learned how to fight enemies. With superior technology, superior numbers, and superior resources, they had learned these lessons by fighting each other. And the curriculum had been written in blood. Every human war had taught them something new about survival. Every defeat had shown them a new way to win. Every victory had given them confidence that impossible odds could be overcome. "Sir," his aide said, interrupting his thoughts, "we're receiving reports from multiple sectors. Human forces that should have been destroyed weeks ago are still fighting. They're using tactics our computers cannot predict." Kethfer stared at the historical records on his screen. The humans were not just fighting for their freedom. They were fighting with the accumulated knowledge of 10,000 years of warfare. They were fighting like a species that had already survived everything the universe could throw at them. "Contact the fleet commanders," he said quietly. "Tell them we may need to reconsider our strategy." The war had lasted 6 months, and the Zenthran Confederation was growing desperate. What should have been a simple demonstration of force had become their worst nightmare. Ambassador Kethfer stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as the largest fleet in Confederation history approached the human stronghold at New Seoul. Over 500 vessels, his tactical officer reported. Every available ship from 3 different sectors. "This is our entire reserve fleet, sir," Kethfer nodded grimly. The humans had cost them nearly 200 ships already, and their resistance was inspiring other species across the galaxy to question Zenthran authority. This had to end now with overwhelming force that would crush human resistance once and for all. "Signal all vessels," he commanded. "Today we end this rebellion. Show no mercy." The massive alien fleet moved through space like a silver storm, their ships arranged in perfect formation. They had used this same tactic against hundreds of other species, and it had never failed. Superior numbers, superior technology, and superior coordination would break any defense. But on the human side, Admiral Kim Tae-ho was not panicking. He stood on the bridge of the battleship Incheon's Hammer, his weathered face calm as he watched the approaching enemy. The ship was named after a famous battle from human history, where outnumbered defenders had held off a much larger force through clever tactics and determination. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "all human vessels are in position. We have 73 ships ready for battle." 73 against 500. The odds were impossible by any reasonable calculation. But Admiral Tae-ho had spent his entire career learning that reasonable calculations meant nothing when survival was at stake. "Signal all vessels," he ordered. "Implement final protocol." Across the human fleet, ship captains received the transmission and began their final preparations. Final protocol was something they had developed specifically for this moment, a tactic that would either save humanity or destroy them completely. Colonel Ominji commanded her own battle group now, 12 ships that had survived months of continuous fighting. Her vessels were battered and scarred, but her crews had learned things about warfare that no academy could teach. "It's all units. This is Colonel O," she announced over the communication system. "This is what we've been preparing for. Remember, they've conquered 847 species, but those species never had to survive against each other for thousands of years. We have. Show them what that means. The battle began exactly as Ambassador Kethver expected. The Zenthran fleet opened fire with their most powerful weapons, launching thousands of energy beams and missiles at the human formation. Their standard doctrine was simple: overwhelm the enemy with superior firepower. Break their formation, then destroy them piece by piece. But the humans did not break. Instead, they did something that confused every alien tactical officer. They scattered in all directions, but not randomly. Each human ship moved according to a carefully planned pattern, drawing the alien fleet into a three-dimensional maze of crossfire and confusion. Captain Nam Donghain led a squadron of fighters in a maneuver that defied every principle of space combat. Instead of avoiding the enemy, he deliberately allowed his formation to be surrounded by alien ships. To the aliens, it looked like the humans had made a fatal mistake. Now, Donghain commanded. His fighters unleashed a coordinated attack that carved through the alien formation like a blade through paper. The human fighters had positioned themselves so that when they fired, their weapons would hit alien ships, no matter which direction they aimed. The aliens, trying to surround the humans, had trapped themselves in a killing zone. "Impossible," muttered the alien tactical officer. "They're using our own formation against us." But this was just the beginning. Lieutenant Commander Yoon Heron commanded a group of destroyers that appeared to be retreating in panic. The aliens pursued them, confident in their superior speed and firepower. But the human ships led their pursuers directly into a debris field filled with destroyed vessels from earlier battles. "Activate the mines," Heron ordered calmly. The debris field exploded as hidden explosives detonated among the wreckage. The aliens had been so focused on chasing the retreating humans that they had not noticed the trap. Dozens of alien ships were destroyed in the massive explosion. Admiral Tejo watched the battle unfold from his command center, his face showing no emotion. "Phase 2, he ordered. "All vessels, implement graveyard protocol." The human fleet suddenly changed tactics again. Instead of fighting in open space, they moved into the debris fields created by destroyed ships. They used the wreckage as cover, as weapons, and as shields. What looked like the remains of defeated ships became tools of victory. Ambassador Kethver watched in horror as his massive fleet was slowly torn apart by tactics he could not understand. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "They're outnumbered 7-1. "Sir," his aide replied nervously, "they're not fighting like any species we've encountered before. They're using every piece of debris, every destroyed ship, every bit of wreckage as a weapon. It's like they've turned the entire battlefield into a trap." The truth was simpler than the aliens could understand. Humans had been fighting each other for 10,000 years, learning from every battle, every defeat, every victory. They had learned to fight enemies with better technology, better numbers, and better resources. They had learned these lessons by fighting each other, and the curriculum had been written in blood. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "we've lost over half our fleet. The humans are advancing on our position." Kethver stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The impossible was happening. The humans were winning.